Congressman Obie for over 30 years, and now it's starting to really be fun because I get more time with him now. And he's retired, supposedly. Hopefully it's going to be temporary. But I was raised that all my heroes in Congress were Kip O'Neill and Sam Rayburn and yada until Congressman Obie started wielding the financial pen. And then everything you knew about all his predecessors was gone. And if you ever saw Dave on the floor of the House with his charts and his easel telling all these people in Congress where every dollar and penny was going, and they're talking about accountability and they're talking about responsibility, Dave had it when he was running that committee. And I want to welcome and thank Dave Obie for coming to speak to us today.
The very first thing I would like to say is that it is important that we not just accept the fact that in the past, counties like Vilas and Florence and Forest have been really tough territory for Democrats. The Republicans have changed this district. They've tried to add what they regard as Republican territory, and sometimes in some very illegitimate ways. Just take a look at the way they carved up Chippewa County. And what I think we have to do is surprise them. And you can't do that by just counting on Forest and Florence and Vilas, the three new counties that are now wholly in this district. I think that anybody in this community who has a friend in any of those counties, we need you to pick up the phone or communicate by computer or snail mail and ask them to get involved in 7th Congressional District activities so that when election time comes, the votes from those counties are a whole lot stronger on the Democratic column than they have been in the past. Forest County used to vote Democrat. People forget that. Quite healthily sometimes. And we can make a big difference if we take advantage of our personal relationships with people in those counties and get them involved in what we're going to be doing here the next year. I want to thank everybody who's here tonight. This is a terrific crowd, and I want to thank Paul and the others who helped organize it. It is really terrific to see all of you here. I want to talk about two things tonight. The first is the governor. I know when we were going through recall elections how uncomfortable it was, and I know how uncomfortable people felt about the recall process itself. And frankly, I felt the same way. But there is a difference. There is a difference in what Walker and his allies have done in the legislature. A difference from anything that anybody has tried to do in state politics up to this time. Yes, I'm angry about what Walker tried to do and what he did do on worker bargaining rights. And yes, I'm angry and upset and troubled by what he's done to the education funding in this state. Those are policy issues that I think he has performed abominably on. But there is another issue which goes beyond the pale, another issue which, in my view, defines the fact that Walker has crossed the line into unacceptable territory. And that is what he has done on the voter ID front. Yes. When you start messing around with people's right to have their vote counted, you're going at the very essence, the very guts of democracy. And when you do that, that should not only be recallable, it should be impeachable.
Yes.
And we need to send a message that we will not tolerate people screwing around with people's basic rights to vote in this country. That is un-American. Walker talks about education and says, oh, I have no choice but to cut those budgets and take away those bargaining rights because we had to balance the budget. Bull gravy. I asked a couple of legislators to talk to the Wisconsin Fiscal Bureau, and I asked them one question. What is the difference in income tax rates that are being paid today in this state versus the rates that were being paid the day that I left the legislature in 1969 to go to Congress? And the word came back that what had happened to the tax rates since that time is that the bottom rate has gone, for the lowest income, the bottom rate has gone up by 70%. The top rate for people who make over 200 grand a year has gone down by 22%. All that Walker would have had to do is to raise that top rate to the level that it was at under Warren Knowles when Knowles was governor. And you would have raised an extra $600 million in the biennium. That's how much we are letting those top brackets get away with murder. And so when he says, oh, I had no choice, he had a choice. He did what he did, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And he ought to pay a price for it, because in the process of what he has done, he has divided this state like never before, not just because of his policy choices, but because of the way he has abused the power that the people of this state gave him. And we need to remember one other thing about it. He wouldn't be sitting where he's sitting today if people had defended their own interest. One of the reasons that I quit, there were a number of them, but one of the reasons that I quit after 48 years in public office is that I got tired of defending people who wouldn't get off the mat and defend themselves. And when you recognize that 37% of union households voted for Walker, you know the job that has to be done to turn things around. So we're going to need each and every one of you to help in that job. And I would ask you while you're at it to call Herb Cole and write Herb Cole, and call Tom Barrett and write Tom Barrett and tell them they ought to run for governor.
We want you
to go with the best candidates. But I want to talk now. And I don't want to give a political speech. I want to talk a little history. I want to give a history lesson. People are asking me today, what in hell has happened to politics, and why is it so tough? Why is it so mean? And what on earth has happened to the economy, and where is this country going? And why is it so bitter? And I thought about that a long time. And here's what I've come to believe. If you take a look at the history of the country, about once every 70 or 80 years, all hell breaks loose, because there are fundamental questions at issue. And until those issues have been settled, this country has been in huge turmoil. Example, start with the guy in the back of the room, the picture, Thomas Jefferson. He drafted that. He and the founding fathers did what they did because they had a belly full, and so they wound up going to war in order to separate themselves from the mother country. And in the 10 years before they decided that, you had huge turmoil in this country. And then after the Revolution, you had basically 60 or 70 years when pressures were again building. And finally, in the 1850s, what happened? We had another fundamental debate about what this society was supposed to look like, focused on slavery, and on what the relationship should be between the federal government and state government. And in the end, we had another war on that. And the question was finally settled. And then things settled down again for another 70 or 80 years. Then after the 1929 crash, we again had a huge debate about what this society ought to look like and what role the government should play in shaping that society. And the main question that was resolved and FDR led the fight on this. The main question was, what should government do to help average people at a time of economic stress? Because up until FDR's time, the government had been used primarily for two reasons. One, to expand the country westward, and second, to work with the big businesses in the country, in order to try to develop the country economically. And FDR tried to widen the deal and cut average people in on the deal. And so, under FDR, pictured next there to Jefferson, under FDR, we established an entirely new safety net. We strengthened the ability of people to defend themselves at the bargaining table with stronger labor laws. We strengthened the ability of government to protect investors and consumers and workers from abuse by corporate America, by providing additional needed regulation. And then we, and then, talk too much today. And then we passed Social Security, which created an economic safety net under millions of American families. And we set the country on the road to providing health care for everybody. FDR wanted to do that. He wanted to do what Medicare did, and he wanted to do what national health care did, but he recognized he didn't have the votes at the time. So when he died, Harry Truman had to fight this fight all over again in the '48 election. And then when Eisenhower came into office, the right wing went to Eisenhower and said, hey, we got to repeal the socialistic programs like Social Security. And Eisenhower said, no way, baby, those are settled questions. And so the right wing went back into its sulk and looked for ways to try to take over government. And then finally, when Jack Kennedy was elected, he started the ball rolling in getting Medicare passed. And then when he was assassinated, Lyndon here finished the job on the Medicare front. And then finally Obama came in, and after Bill Clinton failed to get it done, Obama succeeded in getting health care hugely expanded to cover 50 million additional people in this country. But Obama also inherited the worst economic recession since the 30s. And so he faced the question of how you use government, again, to try to pump up the economy in order to put people back to work and in the process reduce the deficit. And now we're having a fundamental debate about that issue, because the right wing does not believe that there is a role for government in helping average families to get ahead in life. Their only answer is cut taxes for corporations, cut taxes focused largely on the job creators, is what they call the new economic elite in this country. And we are now faced with a choice. It is a moral choice, it is a philosophical choice. And that choice is, again, what do we want the society to look like? Do we want the society to be one that cares for its neighbors in the Judeo-Christian tradition? Do we want a society that believes that it is unacceptable to have corporate CEOs making 400 times as much money as the guy in their plant on the shop floor? Do we want the country to go down the road that believes that we have a social responsibility to one another? Or do we want to follow the patron saint of Paul Ryan and our new United States Senator, John, Ayn Rand? What does Ayn Rand preach? Oh. She preaches that the highest of all values is selfishness. And that if you just pursue your own self-interest to the maximum degree, that the best outcome will be had by all. That is absolute blathering nutcake nonsense. Yeah. But this country faces this choice, and not everybody agrees with it. So we've got one hell of a job to do, and that's why I'm so happy to see this room filled with so many people tonight, because it's going to take a hard slog every single day for the next more than a year, in order to prevent this country from making the wrong choice. The reason politics is so bitter and so tough right now is because the stakes are so high. And if you add to that the fact that you've got segments of the society that will spend anything and do anything to have things their way, you know what it is we're up against. There is nothing more that Obama can do than he has done the last 3 years to try to demonstrate that he's willing to go more than halfway. A lot of times he's gone further than I would. But if anybody doubts that he has been trying to work out bipartisan solutions to problems, they're smoking something that ain't legal, or they are blind. One of the two. And so I mean, the choice is simple. Do we want to continue down the road that demonstrates that we have a balance between personal responsibility and social responsibility in this country, or do we want to walk down a path that says every man for himself and hooray for the lucky ones and to hell with everybody else? Yeah. That's really the choice. And that's why I'm glad to see you here, and that's why we need to work as hard as we need to work for the next year. Thank you. One more thing. Pat Kreidlow is a superb candidate. Pat Kreidlow will be a superb member of Congress. He does need your help. But as one of the labor organizers said when I was up here a couple of months ago, and everybody gave a bunch of speeches, he said, listen, folks, if all you do is come and listen to a bunch of speeches, that isn't anything very significant. That's simply entertainment. And on occasion, it can be bad entertainment. But the fact is, we need action. And action starts with helping to finance the campaigns of people we believe in. So I hope you take John Kelly seriously. And I hope that as you leave tonight, you will dig in your pockets and give twice what you can afford. Because that's the only way that Pat Kreidlow is going to win that election. You're going to see, on this governor's race, you're probably going to see 30 or 40 million bucks spent. When I ran for election the first time, I spent 45,000 bucks. The last time that Julie and Duffy ran, each side spent more than $1 million too. That gives you some idea of how hard it is these days in this game. So we need you. We need your energy. We need your fingers dialing friends on the telephone, and we need you to dig in your pockets and contribute, because it's literally your future that's at stake. Thank you.
The Violet officers anyway stay around and talk to